So a couple years back, had gotten this ore gun set, and a friend of mine got one just the same time. And both of us put a fair amount of time on it. I used it for a weed whacker with a sickle bar, and then she used it for a pole saw, but also a standard string style weed whacker, right? And both of us got a fair amount of time. I did a couple of videos on it, and it was very handy. Well, I had left mine up at the camp, and she ran hers until it quit. A friend of mine. And she was pretty distraught because she needed to run it this year and it wouldn't run. This was the battery she had. It shows, full charge. And I had given her my battery and unit, and she hit that button and it showed nothing. So the assumption was that battery had failed. Well, interestingly enough, this battery here has got some kind of a problem. So while it shows a full charge, never really get a full charge signal on the battery charger. It keeps cycling like that, so it's got a problem of some kind. And the other thing is, and it was confusing her, you get those 4 dots, and then she puts it on the machine. It runs for a couple of seconds and stops. So here, let me put the camera down for a second, then I'll replicate that. So all I did is I put the battery in the machine. That's it. It's gone. So whatever it had, now it says 3, but it doesn't have enough charge to even start the machine, right? So let me put this camera down again, and I'll put the other battery in that has an indicator that says there's no charge. So now I have the battery in there that says no charge. And we'll see if it runs. Trust me that it does, and trust me that it goes for about 10-15 minutes or more before it actually shows any sign of losing power. So its little strip failed, but the battery itself is reasonably good. Where this one here, the strip works, but the battery has totally failed. Now conversely, I had gotten the Husqvarna homeowner's electric saw, and I also got a rather expensive Husqvarna pole saw, and this is just the cheaper battery, and I've had absolutely no problems with it. So whatever they do, point being that the battery they've built and designed is a more robust design than the one on these Oregons, which pains me to say that, but I mean, these are like 6 amp hour batteries. These things here are like a fraction of that. But these provide almost 40 minutes of work before they begin to peter out on these tools right here. I like the design of these things. I mean, they're pretty robust. They seem to work pretty good, but the battery is what's been my problem. It may be that since they were stored in an unheated garage in upstate New York, the temperatures got down into the negatives. That may have destroyed these batteries. I don't know. But this one here is sat in my garage, which also is not heated. Had no problem. So I'm going to work into that a little more, and I'm going to run that along with the battery that doesn't display anything a little bit, and see if it actually produces real work. If it does, I'm going to give it back to the person who owns that machine until we can figure out what's wrong with this battery. I think I'm going to split it apart and see. Which brings the last subject. And I'm going to do it inside here because I really can't talk out there. It's really windy. And this goes back into that whole discussion about, cut and all that people get so heated about. And in this particular job I'm doing, the 2 pieces of the puzzle that I have to accomplish with my felling cut is I have to have enough hinge to direct a tree. And I need to have the face open enough where it doesn't prematurely break that hinge, because there's a lot of things that could get damaged if it does. So, of course, being me, I'm going to over design it because I don't want to take any risks, and I'm retired and I have the time. As soon as the face cut closes, that's when the hinge will break for sure. So I want to have an open enough face cut to where that doesn't happen until the tree is almost on the ground. The second thing is, both these trees are leaning pretty much the wrong way, and it's a windy day. So I'm going to use a heavier than normal hinge just to make sure the tree goes where I want it to go, because I'm going to use the winch yet again to pull them over. And on the bigger of the two trees, I'll do an open face cut like I normally do. I'll do a back cut like I normally do, but instead of doing a bore cut, I'll just do a back cut because it's just not a big enough tree to stick a bar in there. But I'll put a wedge in there just to support it so it doesn't fall back to the house until I can get pulling with the winch. And then the winch is the Uniforest 65H with a remote, very handy. But the key here is I've got about 12,000 pounds of tug, which should be more than enough to pull the tree over. Yeah, I know it's way over designed, but in things like this, you know, I got the time. Why not do everything possible to minimize the risk? Now, to the kind of things I want to maximize is I want as much distance between where I pull from, otherwise where I put the chain on the tree and the base of the tree. So instead of doing a Humboldt style cut where it might be 6-8 inches up off the ground, I'll get that extra 6 to 8 inches by doing a conventional cut where the hinge is right next to the ground. So yet again, having the hinge lower is better in this one because it gives the tractor more leverage when it's pulling on that tree. The second thing is the angle of the cable. If you have it way up the tree, you're basically pulling up on the device that you're pulling from, and you're reducing the ability for it to stay put. Now, in this case, it's overkill. So what I'm going to do is I'll put it up as far as I can reach, and that's going to be enough. But having that cable where the angle relative to the tractor doesn't put a lot of lift on the back of the tractor is better than one where it goes further up the tree and puts a lot of lift on the back of that tractor. If I had a smaller tractor, it would matter. So I'm just going to do good practices. And then if a person happens to do something like this, getting those angles right with a cable where it's not too far up the tree, but it's far enough in order to pull it over, but not so far that it actually lifts the device you're pulling from. I could probably do the same thing I'm doing with a big heavy tractor with a darn quad by using these angles and this orientation. It's certainly a compact tractor. But when I have a 10,000 pound tractor with 12,000 pounds of pull in the winch, I literally could probably pull that tree down, roots and all. I don't even have to make a cut. But for the purpose of the video, I want to make a point about the face cut, not breaking the hinge. I want to make a point of having that hinge and the final back cut as close to the ground as possible to give the proper leverage to the winch setup, and also have the angle of the cable to the tree such that it's a straight pull or pretty close to a straight pull. Those are the things to look for. And oh yeah, as light a saw as possible, because most of the work I'll be doing limbing this tree is going to be waist high. And then I'm going to probably just use one of the ground up chains on the 562 or possibly the 572 to do the bucking and the cleanup, felling as well. So that's what's on the menu for today. Yeah, it feels kind of goofy using a cell phone for a video camera, but it actually works pretty good. I have to get a better stand because it kind of gets blown around in the wind. Now today, like I said, I did most of my talking in the shop as I'm preparing for my jobs. And that's because it's so windy out that there's going to just be nothing but wind buffeting noise. So there's no sense in me trying to chatter out on the job. But like I said, the things I'm going to focus on is pulling trees over with the winch, but making that open face cut and have the hinge as low as I can to maximize the amount of leverage that the winch has to pull the tree over. It's a windy day. Now, again, I'm over-engineering it. I know that. Meantime, what's going on up there in CSX land, if anything? See, that's the beauty of these apps that I'm using to keep track of the trains. This one's from Broadcastify. I can listen to these different feeds from pretty much anywhere, so I can decide if I want to go up and take a picture, or if I happen to be in the area, is it worth taking a picture or waiting for a train, because I can hear them as they pass the mile markers. Now, one of the reasons why I've done more trains...
CSX Equipment Defect Detector, milepost 334.0, track 2, no defects, no defects, total axle 388, end of transmission.
See? And that gives me a clue as to whether or not I should go take a look at the trains or not. Now, one of the reasons why I've been doing more trains now...
No defects, track 2E, CSX 7254.
All right. One of the reasons I've been doing more trains is I had a knee injury and an eye surgery. And that's kind of slowed me down this last month. I had to get the eye surgery done. It's been an injury I've had since a kid. Well, a young man. From the dirt bikes. And the knee, well, it just decided to go away on me. So, because I'm carrying a few more pounds than I need to. But that basically put me out of the woods. So we're kind of creeping our way back in. But to keep my mind active and keep things interesting.
CSX Equipment Defect Detector, milepost 345.0, track 2.
I've been doing the trains, and I enjoy them. I kind of hope you do. I have the other channel, HTSS Outboards, Boats, and Trains, where most of that stuff will be displayed. I'll put a train or two on a fleet command. But I've been focusing more on the logging, the farming, and the saws there, and I'll do less and less of distracting things like the trains and more on the saws. The reason I haven't been back in the shop is I just can't use compressed air and risk having anything go up in my eye. I've got a bunch of shop projects I've wanted to do, and I just couldn't get to them. But we're getting there, you know. Things are coming along. Got some different glasses. Going to use a different technique to clean the cases. I got a 570 I really want to put together for fun, and I have a 575 I want to break down, and maybe that's what I'll do after we do some cutting today, is I'll do enough to feel like I've moved something forward. But I'm kind of itching to get back into the shop, and I'm sure you guys get sick of watching trains, the ones on the HTSS channel, or the ones on the Fleet Command channel for sure. But we'll get there little by little, you know. I keep telling my kids, don't get old, but they don't listen. All right, let's look at this situation right here. We've got a house right back there, which we don't want to hit, pretty close in. And we've got a pretty heavy lean back to the house. Don't want to do that. So the plan is to have an open face hinge and put a cable up there, put some wedges back there with a standard back cut to support it, with a little heavier than usual hinge, so it's more than enough to support that tree. And then just see if we can't pull it over with the winch, which I think we can. Now, before I do that, is I'm going to take as many of these branches as I can on this side off and around where that fence is, so if it goes down, you know, it doesn't hit that fence with the branches. But I also want to see if that battery has any life in it. That's really the goal. So let me set this on a stand and see if we can make that happen. That's what I was looking for. Total control. You know, I didn't want it to break until it hit the ground. No chance of it going back at the house. So it was so thick that it just simply had enough strength where I could wedge it over. Actually, I didn't really need the cable. And I put a couple wedges in there, started to go, but I needed some video. So this ought to be logging meets residential work. Totally different set of parameters. But you know, trees hit the ground the same time, same way, same place. All right, let's run the battery out.
Yeah. I'll try.
Go right forward. I'm gonna knock this stuff off.
Okay.
keep hanging on to it. This one? Nope, keep going. That one, nope, keep going. There's one at the very end of it. Too rough. Too rough. So, doing that little job, moving it along, I used most of a tank, but not a whole tank. Both of the bar oil and the gasoline, and I used up one battery worth of that Oregon. Well, cut pretty good, didn't it? You know, hog it into that wood, and it was cutting pretty good. Now, what's the takeaway? Look at that thing. It's a safety chain. It's not even a full chisel. So, takeaway is anything looks fast in pine, and any chain looks good in pine. You can have the goofiest tooth and the goofiest filing you want. Put it against some horsepower and enough chain speed, and it's going to look fast in pine. That's the takeaway.